The badge around my neck felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the weight of being somewhere I absolutely, positively, 100% should not have been. My name is Beckett Harland. I am a civilian systems technician employed by the Galactic Alliance on a 6-month contract basis. My job description includes maintaining antiquated power containment units, recalibrating atmospheric processes that nobody else wants to touch, and staying invisible. That last part was an unofficial requirement, but it was the one I excelled at most, until today. The corridor stretched before me like a gilded throat ready to swallow me whole. Golden walls rose toward vaulted ceilings that seemed to touch infinity itself. Massive windows filtered amber light that cast everything in warm honey tones. Somewhere behind me, a door had clicked shut with the finality of a judge's gavel. Turn left at Junction 7 Alpha. Proceed through Maintenance Access Corridor B, I muttered. Consulting my datapad for the 3rd time, should lead directly to subsection 19. I looked up at the ornate pillars, framing what appeared to be a ceremonial hall. This does not look like subsection 19. Guards lined the walls like statues, Valorian sentinels in their characteristic obsidian armor, pulse rifles held at parade rest. Their helmeted heads tracked my movement with unsettling synchronization. Diplomats in flowing robes whispered to each other, their conversations dying as I passed. High-ranking military officials from 17 different species stopped mid-sentence to stare at the human technician, shuffling through the Meridian Prime Central Command's most restricted ceremonial wing. I smiled weakly, waved my badge. Just passing through. Wrong turn. Happens to everyone, right? It did not happen to everyone. The expressions on every face made that abundantly clear. My uniform, a simple dark blue jumpsuit with silver trim and a maintenance division patch on the shoulder, stood out among the sea of ceremonial dress like a smudge on a painting. The patch identified me as Alliance Technical Services Class 3 clearance, good enough to fix a broken generator, not nearly good enough to be within 17 light years of where I currently stood. "You there?" a deep voice called out. A Valorian commander approached, his purple skin darkening with what I assumed was irritation. "What is your purpose in the Grand Reception Hall?" "Grand Reception Hall," I repeated, my voice cracking slightly. "Is that what this is? I was looking for the auxiliary power junction. My work order says, silence." The commander held up a hand. His eyes, all 4 of them, narrowed. "The Sovereign Assembly is conducting formal inspections. No unauthorized personnel are permitted within this sector. How did you bypass security protocols?" "Bypass!" I held up my badge like a shield. I followed the directions exactly. Well, mostly exactly. The maintenance corridors all looked the same, and there was this junction that split 3 ways, when the map only showed 2. And then I heard voices and thought, maybe someone could point me in the right direction. And the commander's expression suggested he was calculating exactly how many regulations I had violated. Based on his deepening scowl, the number was substantial. "Remain here," he ordered. "I will summon security to escort you to the proper authorities." Proper authorities. Those words rarely preceded anything good. I had visions of spending the rest of my contract in a detention cell, explaining to increasingly skeptical officers that I genuinely had just gotten lost. Then I heard it. Footsteps, small ones, quick and light, echoing off the polished floors with an urgency that cut through the murmured conversations like a blade through silk. Everyone turned toward the sound. At the far end of the hall, enormous golden doors had opened. Beyond them, I caught a glimpse of what must have been the assembly chamber itself, a cathedral of light and power where the most important decisions in the galaxy were made. But that was not what captured my attention. A small figure had broken away from the procession within. She was running, actually running, through the grand reception hall, past diplomats and soldiers and officials who parted before her like waves around a stone. She was Valanthe. That much was immediately obvious. Her skin was the distinctive azure blue of her species, luminous and flawless. Her hair fell in dark waves around a face that still held the soft roundness of childhood. She could not have been more than 5 or 6 in human equivalent years. She wore a dress of blue and pink floral patterns that seemed almost absurdly normal amid all the ceremonial grandeur, and she was heading directly toward me. The Valorian commander stepped forward. "Your Highness." Please, Your Highness." The child did not slow down. If anything, she ran faster. Her small shoes slapped against the marble floor in a rhythm that seemed to count down the seconds until my life became infinitely more complicated. "Stop her!" someone shouted from behind. Guards moved, too slow. Diplomats reached out, not fast enough. The little girl threw herself forward in the last few meters, arms outstretched, and collided with me, her arms wrapped around my waist with surprising strength. She buried her face in my chest, fingers clutching the fabric of my uniform like she was afraid I might disappear. A sob escaped her, a small, desperate sound that cracked something deep in my chest. "You came back," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "You came back. You came back. You came back." The entire hall froze, not figuratively, literally. Every single person, from the lowest-ranking aide to the highest-ranking admiral, stopped moving. Stopped breathing, it seemed. The silence was so complete that I could hear the hum of the environmental systems 3 floors above. I stood perfectly still, a child clinging to me, 100 pairs of eyes burning holes through my skull, and absolutely no idea what was happening. My mouth opened and closed. Nothing useful emerged. The golden doors at the far end of the hall swung open wider. A figure emerged, tall, commanding, radiating authority like heat from a star. She was Valanthe as well, her azure skin catching the light with an almost metallic sheen. Burgundy hair fell in elaborate braids that cascaded past her shoulders, held in place by an intricate silver tiara set with deep ruby gems. Her armor was extraordinary, silver plates fitted with precise craftsmanship, adorned with more of those crimson gems that seemed to pulse with inner fire. It was ceremonial, clearly, but something about the way she carried herself suggested she knew exactly how to use the blade at her hip. Her eyes, glowing softly with inner luminescence, fixed upon me with an intensity that made my knees consider buckling. Sovereign Thessara, High Queen of the Valanthe Dominion, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces of the Outer Rim, the single most powerful individual in 3 star systems, and apparently the mother of the child currently sobbing into my uniform. The Queen approached. Her footsteps made no sound despite the armor. Guards fell in around her, hands on weapons, waiting for any sign of threat. I suspected I was the threat they were waiting for. She stopped 3 meters away, close enough that I could see the faint patterns woven into her braids, the slight tightening at the corners of her eyes, close enough that if she decided to kill me personally, it would take less than a second. "Aelith." Her voice was surprisingly soft, controlled, but soft. "What are you doing?" The child, Aelith, lifted her tear-streaked face just enough to answer. "Mama, it is him. It is really him. I told you he was real. I told you." The Queen's gaze shifted from her daughter to me. I tried very hard to look like someone who had not just accidentally stumbled into the most sensitive diplomatic location in the galaxy while a princess attached herself to him. "My daughter," the Queen said slowly, each word measured and precise, "seems to believe she knows you." She paused. "Do you know my daughter, human?" Every guard in the room tensed. I looked down at Aelith, at her small fingers still gripping my uniform, at the tears still rolling down her blue cheeks. at the hope shining in her eyes like starlight. And suddenly, impossibly, I remembered. 4 years earlier, the colony world of Caleth Minor had been a footnote in galactic geography, a small agricultural settlement on the edge of nowhere, populated by a few thousand farmers and the service workers who supported them. The kind of place where nothing ever happened, until something happened. The Scarati raiders had come without warning. One moment the skies were clear, the next dropships were falling like iron rain. The colony's defenses, minimal at best, crumbled within hours. Evacuation orders went out across all channels, but the raiders had targeted the spaceport first. Most civilians had nowhere to go. I had been on Caleth Minor purely by accident. My transport ship had stopped for emergency repairs, stranding me and 17 other travelers in what was supposed to be a 48-hour layover. Instead, we found ourselves trapped in a war zone. The resistance effort was chaotic, farmers with hunting rifles standing alongside off-duty security personnel, merchants organizing supply chains out of shopping centers. Anyone who could help, helped. And somehow, in the confusion, I ended up assigned to search and rescue operations in the Eastern Settlement District. "Building clear," someone shouted through my borrowed communication device. "Moving to next sector." I acknowledged and kept moving. The streets were a maze of destruction, collapsed walls, burning vehicles, debris scattered like the aftermath of a giant's tantrum. Smoke hung thick in the air, turning everything gray and indistinct. That was when I heard the crying. It was faint, easy to miss beneath the distant explosions and the crackling of fires. But I had always had sharp ears, and something about that sound, small, terrified, utterly alone, cut through everything else. I followed it to what remained of a residential building. The upper floors had collapsed inward, creating a precarious mountain of rubble. Somewhere beneath, protected by a pocket of structural integrity that should not have existed, the crying continued. It took me 2 hours to clear a path. 2 hours of shifting debris by hand, while my muscles screamed and my lungs burned. 2 hours of talking constantly, saying anything, everything, just to let whoever was trapped down there know they were not alone. When I finally broke through, I found her, a little girl with blue skin and dark hair, curled into a ball in the corner of what had been a basement storage room. Her clothes were torn and dusty, her face was streaked with tears and ash, but her eyes, those luminous, beautiful eyes, locked onto mine with desperate hope. "Hey there," I said softly, my voice hoarse from the dust and smoke. "My name is Beckett. I am here to help you. Can you tell me your name?" She did not answer. She was trembling too hard, shock and fear rendering her mute. But when I held out my hand, she took it. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine with a grip far stronger than her size suggested. "Okay," I said. "Okay, we are going to get out of here. I have got you, I promise." The extraction point was 3 kilometers away, under normal circumstances an easy walk. Under current circumstances, with raiders still patrolling the streets, fires spreading from block to block, and a traumatized child who could barely stand. It was an odyssey. We moved at night, hiding during the day. I found us shelter in an abandoned shop, its windows shattered but its walls intact. I shared my emergency rations, not much, but enough. I wrapped her in my jacket when the temperature dropped, even though it left me shivering. And when the nightmares came, and they came every time she closed her eyes, I held her and told her stories. "Once upon a time," I whispered, while explosions echoed in the distance, "there was a little star who got lost in the big, dark sky." She looked up at me, still silent, but listening. The little star was scared because she could not find her way home, but she did not know that her mother, the biggest, brightest star in the whole galaxy, was already looking for her. And no matter how dark the sky got, and no matter how lost the little star felt, her mother's light was always shining, always searching, always finding its way back. The girl's trembling slowed. Her grip on my shirt loosened, just slightly. The little star just had to wait, I continued. She had to be brave for a little while longer, and then her mother would find her, and she would never be lost again. Little star, the girl murmured, her first words in 2 days. That is right. I smiled despite everything. You are my little star, okay? And I am going to keep you safe until your mother finds you. 3 days. That was how long it took for Alliance forces to break through the Skarathi blockade. 3 days of hiding, of rationing food and water, of singing songs I barely remembered from my own childhood to keep a frightened girl calm. 3 days of promising over and over that everything would be okay. When the rescue transports finally arrived, the relief was overwhelming. I carried her through the chaos of the evacuation zone, through crowds of desperate refugees, all pushing toward safety. A medical team spotted us and rushed over. She is uninjured, I reported, my voice barely functioning. Dehydrated, probably in shock. She has not told me her name, but she is Valanthi. Someone must be looking for her. The medics took over with professional efficiency. They lifted her onto a stretcher, began checking vital signs, prepared to transport her to the field hospital. I stepped back, suddenly exhausted beyond words. Wait. The small voice cut through the noise. The girl was reaching for me, straining against the medic's hands. Wait, do not leave. I moved to her side, took her hand one more time. Hey, little star, listen to me. Tears were streaming down her face again. You cannot go. You promised. I promised to keep you safe until your mother found you, I said gently. And look. I gestured to the medical team, to the soldiers, to the evacuation ships lifting off in the distance. Help is here now. Your mother is going to find you. I know she is. But what about you? I smiled. I will be okay. I am always okay. And maybe someday, when you are all grown up and I am old and gray, you will remember the silly human who told you bad stories to help you sleep, and you will smile. She did not smile then. She was too young, too scared, too overwhelmed to do anything but cry. But she let the medics take her away. And as she disappeared into the crowd, she called out one last time, I will remember. I promise. I will remember. I watched until she vanished from sight. Then I found a quiet corner behind a supply crate, slid down against it, and finally allowed myself to collapse. I never gave anyone my name, never filed a report, never claimed credit for anything. I was just another face in the chaos, and when my transport ship finally departed 2 days later, I left Caleth Minor behind without looking back. I never knew she was a princess. I never knew her mother was a queen. The memory crashed through me like a wave. 4 years since Caleth Minor. 4 years since I'd held a frightened girl in a basement and told her stories about little stars. I looked down at Aelith, at the child who had been a toddler when I found her, now grown into someone who could speak and run, and apparently break every protocol in the Galactic Alliance just to cross a room. Little star, I whispered. Her face transformed. The tears did not stop, but they were joined now by a smile so bright it could have powered a starship. You remember? She clutched me tighter. I knew you would remember. I knew it. I never forgot. Mama said maybe I dreamed you, but I knew you were real. The Queen, Sovereign Thesara, had gone very still. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of royal composure that revealed nothing. But something in her eyes had shifted, something uncertain, questioning. Caleth Minor, I said, addressing her directly for the first time. My voice was steadier than I expected. 4 years ago, the Skarathi raid. A ripple went through the assembled crowd. Whispers exchanged between diplomats, soldiers glancing at each other with new curiosity. The Queen raised a hand. Instant silence. Explain, she commanded. I took a breath. I was stranded there during the attack, civilian, got caught up in the evacuation effort. Found a little girl trapped in a collapsed building. I looked down at Aelith. Blue skin, dark hair, would not tell me her name no matter how many times I asked. We hid together for 3 days until rescue came. 3 days, the Queen repeated slowly. I told her stories, I continued. Bad ones, mostly, about stars and the sky. I called her Little Star because she would not give me anything else to call her. I managed a weak smile. I had no idea who she was, who her family was. She was scared and alone, and nobody should be alone when they are scared. The Queen's composure cracked, just for an instant, a flicker of something raw and vulnerable beneath the mask. Then it was gone, replaced by something that might have been wonder. We searched for you, she said quietly. After the raid, after we recovered Aelith. She spoke of a human who had protected her, who had stayed with her when our forces could not reach her. We searched for months. I did not leave my name, I admitted. I did not think it mattered. I was just passing through. It mattered. The Queen's voice carried weight. My daughter was visiting the agricultural research station with her caretakers when the attack began. We lost contact within the first hour. For 72 hours, I believed. She stopped, collected herself. For 72 hours, I did not know if my child was alive or dead. The grand reception hall was utterly silent. I was dimly aware that I was witnessing something unprecedented, a sovereign of the Valanthi Dominion showing emotional vulnerability in front of hundreds of witnesses. This would be discussed in political circles for decades. I did not care about political circles. I cared about the little girl still holding on to me, and the mother who had spent 4 years not knowing who had kept her child alive. Your Majesty, I said carefully, I did not do anything extraordinary. I found a child who needed help, and I helped her. Anyone would have done the same. No. The Queen shook her head slowly. They would not. I have learned that, in my years of rule. Many would have prioritized their own survival. Many would have left a child who was not their own. Many would have made excuses, found reasons, justified their choices. She looked at me, really looked, as if seeing past my rumpled uniform and lost technician exterior to something underneath. You stayed. You protected her when no army could reach her. You gave her hope when there was none. Aelith tugged at my sleeve. Tell her about the stories, she urged. Tell her about the little star. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. They were just something to pass the time, to help her sleep. She tells them to herself still, the Queen said. Every night before bed, the little star who was lost but found her way home. Her voice softened. She never forgot you. She has been waiting 4 years for you to appear again. I looked down at Aelith, at her hopeful face, at the trust shining in her eyes, the same trust I had seen in a basement on Caleth Minor, when I was just a stranger who had crawled through rubble to reach her. I did not know, I said helplessly. I never knew who she was. If I had known... What? The Queen tilted her head. What would you have done differently? I thought about it, really thought, and the answer that emerged surprised even me. Nothing, I admitted. I would have done exactly the same thing. Princess or not, queen or not. She was a scared kid who needed help. That is all that mattered. Something changed in the Queen's expression then. The mask fell away entirely, replaced by a warmth I had not expected from someone of her position. She stepped forward, closing the distance between us, and for a terrifying moment, I thought she might strike me. Instead, she bowed, not deeply, a slight inclination of the head, a gesture of respect rather than submission, but from a sovereign of the Valanthi Dominion, it might as well have been falling to her knees. The hall erupted, gasps, murmurs, the rustle of 100 formal robes as people shifted in disbelief. a queen bowing to a maintenance technician. Protocol had not just been broken, it had been shattered into pieces and scattered to the stars. "You protected my daughter," the queen said, straightening, "when no power in the galaxy could reach her. For that, I am eternally grateful. I had no idea what to do. My training, such as it was, covered circuit repairs and system diagnostics, not how to respond when alien royalty thanked you for accidentally saving their child." "You're welcome?" It came out as a question, not my finest moment. The next several hours were a blur of conversations, introductions, and increasingly bewildered expressions from everyone involved. The formal inspection had been delayed, possibly indefinitely, as news of what had happened spread through the headquarters like wildfire through dry grass. I was escorted, gently but firmly, to a private chamber adjacent to the grand reception hall. Aelith refused to let go of my hand, and nobody seemed willing to argue with the princess. The queen joined us shortly, having dismissed all but her most trusted advisors. "Sit," she instructed, gesturing to an arrangement of chairs that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Please." I sat. Aelith immediately climbed into the chair beside me, pressing close against my side like she was afraid I might evaporate if she did not maintain physical contact. "Tell me," the queen said, settling into her own seat with the grace of someone born to command, "what brings you to Meridian Prime Central Command? And do not say a wrong turn. I am asking about your purpose here." "Contract work, Your Majesty." I pulled my badge from around my neck and offered it for inspection. 6-month assignment. They needed someone to update the old power containment systems in the lower levels. Most of the original technicians who knew those systems have retired or moved on. I have experience with antiquated technology. The Queen examined the badge with what seemed like genuine interest. Beckett Harland, Technical Services Division, Class 3 clearance. She looked up. "And before this assignment?" "Various contracts, wherever the work was. I spent a year on the orbital platforms around Theraxis, 6 months on a mining station in the Kelith Belt, a few years bouncing between agricultural worlds doing infrastructure maintenance." I shrugged. "I go where I'm needed. No permanent residence, no family?" "No, Your Majesty, it is just me." Aelith tugged at my sleeve. "Do you still not have anyone to tell stories to?" The question hit harder than expected. "No, little star, just me and the machines." "That is sad," she declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Everyone should have someone to tell stories to." The Queen watched this exchange with an expression I could not quite identify. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different quality, less formal, more deliberate. "Mr. Harland, I would like to make you an offer." I braced myself. In my experience, offers from powerful people rarely led anywhere good. "Your Majesty, the Valanthi Dominion is prepared to extend you full citizenship within our territories. This would include housing, employment, medical care, and all rights and privileges afforded to our people." She paused. "Additionally, I would like to offer you a position within the royal household." I blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "My daughter has spoken of you for 4 years. She has drawn pictures of the human who saved her, written stories about him in her lessons, asked every human she has met if they know someone named Little Star's friend." The Queen's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "You are, to her, something between a hero and a mythological figure. I believe she would benefit greatly from having you present in her life." "But I'm just a technician," I protested weakly. "I fix machines. I'm not qualified to be part of a royal household." "You are qualified to care," the Queen countered. "You are qualified to protect. You are qualified to tell stories that help frightened children sleep. Those qualifications are rarer than you might imagine." Aelith was practically vibrating with excitement. "Please say yes, please, please, please." You can stay with us, and I can show you my room and my toys and my garden, and I can tell you all the stories I have learned since you taught me about the little star." "Little star," I said gently. "This is a very big decision. I can't just—" "Why not?" She tilted her head, genuinely confused. "You said you have no home. You said you have no family. We can be your home. We can be your family." She said it so simply, as if the answer was obvious, as if choosing to reshape one's entire existence was no more complicated than choosing what to have for breakfast. I looked at the Queen, hoping for some kind of guidance. She offered none, simply waiting with infinite patience for my response. "Your Majesty, I need to understand something." I chose my words carefully. 4 years ago, I did what anyone should do when they find a child in danger. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just ordinary. Why would you offer all of this to someone ordinary? The Queen leaned forward slightly. "Because ordinary people who do extraordinary things without expecting recognition are the rarest people in the galaxy. Because my daughter needs to know that the world contains people like you, people who help simply because helping is right, because—" She hesitated, and for just a moment I saw the mother beneath the monarch. "Because I spent 72 hours not knowing if my child was alive, and you gave her back to me. No reward I offer could ever match that gift." The weight of her words settled over me like a blanket. I thought about my life, the endless contracts, the anonymous work, the ships that carried me from one temporary home to another. I thought about the loneliness I had grown so accustomed to that I barely noticed it anymore. I thought about a little girl who had remembered me for 4 years when everyone else had forgotten. "Can I ask," I said slowly, "what exactly this position would involve?" The Queen's almost smile returned. "Whatever we need it to involve. Technical consultant, educational advisor, companion to the princess. The title is flexible." Her eyes met mine. "What matters is that you would be part of our household, part of our family." Family. The word echoed in my mind. I had not had a family since I was younger than Aelith. The concept felt foreign, like a language I'd once spoken but forgotten. Aelith squeezed my hand. "You can stay," she whispered. "You do not have to be alone anymore." And there it was, the simple truth from the mouth of a child. I had been alone for so long that I had convinced myself I preferred it that way. But sitting here, in this impossibly ornate room, with a princess holding my hand and a queen offering me a place to belong. "Okay," I heard myself say. Yes. Aelith's shriek of joy probably damaged my hearing permanently. She launched herself at me with the full force of a happy 6-year-old, nearly knocking me off the chair. I caught her, laughing despite myself, the first genuine laugh I had experienced in months. "You will not regret this," she declared into my shoulder. "I will show you everything, everything." The Queen rose from her chair with fluid grace. "Then it is settled. I will have my staff prepare the necessary documentation. Mr. Harland," she paused. "Beckett, welcome to the family." The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. I went from living in a cramped quarters unit in the maintenance section to a suite in the Volanthi delegation wing. I went from eating alone in the cafeteria to taking meals in the royal dining hall, where Aelith insisted I sit next to her. I went from being invisible to being the most talked-about human in 3 star systems. The story spread quickly: the maintenance technician who had saved the princess, the ordinary man who had been found by a child's love. News networks ran segments about it. Diplomats referenced it in speeches about cross-species cooperation. Someone even wrote a song about it, which Aelith thought was hilarious and insisted on playing approximately 400 times. "You are famous now. She told me one afternoon as we walked through the headquarters botanical garden, her small hand firmly clasped in mine. Everyone knows who you are. I was happier when no one knew who I was, I admitted. Why? I thought about how to explain it. When people know who you are, they have expectations. They think you should act a certain way, say certain things. It's easier to just be nobody. Aelith considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. But if you were nobody, I would not have found you, and then we could not be friends. That's true, I conceded. I guess some things are worth the attention. She beamed. I am worth the attention. The worthiest, I agreed. The garden was beautiful, a carefully cultivated collection of plants from dozens of worlds, arranged to create harmonious ecosystems. Flowers that glowed with bioluminescence, trees that hummed at frequencies just below hearing. A small pond filled with creatures that looked like swimming jewels. We found a bench near the pond and sat together, watching the creatures dart through the water. Beckett? Aelith's voice had grown quiet. Yes, little star. Do you remember what you told me? In the basement, when the bad people were outside. I nodded slowly. I remember. You said the little star's mother would find her, that her light was always shining, always searching. She looked up at me with those luminous eyes. You were right. Mama never stopped looking. She told me that every day she sent ships to search. Every day she watched the reports, even when everyone else said I might be. She swallowed. She never stopped. That's what mothers do, I said. They never stop looking for their children. But you stayed with me until she found us. Aelith leaned against my side. You kept me safe in the dark. I was so scared, Beckett, so scared. But you were there, and you made the fear smaller. My throat tightened. You were very brave, little star. Braver than you know. I was brave because you told me I could be. She said it simply, without drama, just a statement of fact. I want to be brave like that for other people someday, when I am queen. I looked at her, really looked, at the child who would one day rule an entire dominion, at the little girl who had been transformed by 3 days in a basement with a stranger who told bad stories about stars. You will be, I said. You already are. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the swimming jewels dance through the water, somewhere in the distance. I could hear the hum of the headquarters systems, the constant background noise of civilization at work. But here, in this garden, everything felt peaceful, still, right. Beckett. Yes? Will you tell me the story again, about the little star who found her way home? I smiled. Always, little star, always. And so I did. I told her the story I had created in a ruined basement 4 years ago, while the world burned around us and hope seemed like a distant memory. I told her about the star who got lost, and the mother who never stopped searching, and the journey home that seemed impossible until it was not. But this time I added a new part. A part about a wandering human who found the little star in the darkness and stayed with her until the light came. A human who did not think of himself as special, but who mattered more than he knew. A human who, in helping a lost child find her way home, had finally found his own way home too. Aelith listened with the rapt attention she always gave my stories. When I finished, she was smiling. That is a good ending, she said. I think so too. We stayed in the garden until the artificial sunset began, painting the glass dome above us in shades of orange and purple. Then Aelith took my hand again, and together we walked back toward the royal quarters. Tomorrow there would be meetings and protocols and 1,000 small adjustments as I figured out how to fit into this new life. Tomorrow there would be challenges and expectations, and the constant awareness that I was an ordinary human in an extraordinary world. But tonight I had a little star walking beside me and a place where I belonged, and the knowledge that sometimes the most important moments in our lives begin with nothing more than a wrong turn down a corridor we were never supposed to enter. The grand reception hall had frozen when a princess ran across it to hug a stranger. But in that frozen moment, something beautiful had been set in motion, something that would change both our lives forever. And I would not trade it for anything in the galaxy. 1 year later, the annual Galactic Cooperation Summit drew delegates from every corner of settled space. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species gathered at Meridian Prime Central Command to discuss treaties, trade agreements, and the endless minutiae of interstellar governance. I stood at the edge of the grand reception hall, the same hall where my life had changed a year ago, and watched the crowds move through their carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy. "You look uncomfortable," a familiar voice observed. I turned to find the Queen standing beside me, resplendent in ceremonial armor that put last year's attire to shame. The rubies in her silver plates caught the light like captured stars. "Formal events make me nervous," I admitted. "Too many people, too much attention." "You could always get lost again," she suggested with a hint of amusement. "I understand the maintenance corridors are lovely this time of year. Very funny, Your Majesty." "Thesara," she corrected, "I believe we have moved past formal titles, given that you read bedtime stories to my daughter every night. She insists on the little star story at least 3 times a week," I said. "I have tried introducing new characters, but she is very particular. She gets that from me." The Queen, Thesara, watched the crowd with eyes that missed nothing. "The Talarian ambassador wishes to meet you later. Apparently his species has a similar concept of the wandering protector, someone who guards children not their own. He believes you may be a cultural bridge." "I'm a systems technician," I reminded her. "You are a member of my household and one of the most famous humans in the sector. That makes you a diplomat, whether you intended it or not." She turned to face me directly. "Though I notice you still insist on maintaining the power containment systems in your spare time." "Old habits," I shrugged. "Besides, those systems genuinely needed updating. I could not just abandon them." "You have never been able to abandon anything that needs help," Thesara observed. "It is perhaps your most defining characteristic." Before I could respond, a commotion at the far end of the hall drew our attention. The crowd was parting, people stepping aside with expressions of surprise and amusement. A small blue figure was making her way toward us with determined strides, her formal dress somewhat askew and a slightly frazzled attendant hurrying in her wake. "Your Highness," the attendant called, "the ceremony is not finished. You cannot simply—" "I can and I am," Aelith declared without slowing down. "Beckett is here, and I have been standing still for 1,000,000 years." "It was 45 minutes, the attendant said weakly. Aelith reached us and immediately attached herself to my side. "I have been very patient," she informed her mother, "very patient, but he promised to show me the new fish in the garden pond, and I have waited forever." Thesara raised an eyebrow at me. "I may have mentioned something about bioluminescent koi from the Tessarian moon system," I admitted. "They arrived yesterday, and I thought she might like to see them." "Glowing fish," Aelith bounced on her heels. "They glow, Mama. Different colors." The Queen sighed, but there was no real frustration in it. "Very well. You have my permission to abandon diplomatic protocol in favor of luminescent aquatic life, but you will return for the evening reception." "Promise." Aelith grabbed my hand and began pulling me toward the garden exit. "Come on, Beckett, before they stop glowing." "They do not stop glowing," I explained as she dragged me away. "That is sort of the point. But what if they do? What if we miss it?" We navigated through the crowd, Aelith clearing a path with the simple expedience of being a princess who clearly had somewhere important to be. Diplomats smiled, officials chuckled, An elderly Valorian general actually winked at me as we passed. 1 year ago, I had been nobody, a nameless technician stumbling through corridors he should not have entered. Now, I had a family, a home, a purpose, all because a little girl remembered. "Beckett?" Aelith's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Yes, little star? When we see the fish, will you tell me a story about them?" I smiled. "I will tell you the best story, about magical fish who lived in a palace garden and brought light to everyone who visited them. And there will be a little star?" "Always," I said. "Every story has a little star." She grinned, that brilliant, impossible grin that could light up entire star systems. And we walked together toward the garden, toward the glowing fish, toward whatever new chapter came next in the story of an ordinary human who found an extraordinary family. Because sometimes the best stories do not start with grand quests or epic battles. Sometimes they start with a wrong turn, a crying child, and the simple choice to stay. The end.